Which is better, active or standing recovery? My coach is always belted at me, get a jog on between reps, hence our group nickname is GAJO. But are there really benefits for doing active recoveries? In this video, we'll find out. So which is better, active or standing recovery? For me, I'd always say active. Reason being is that by moving around, you're shuttling the lactate around your body. People always seem to think that lactate is a bad thing, but it is necessary for creating energy from our muscles. It is only when there's a lack of oxygen does lactate turn into lactic acid, which is what you're feeling when your legs are burning. This is due to the lack of oxygen, and that is changing the lactate's pH levels and making it into more of an acid. So by cycling it around your body during your active recoveries, you're teaching your body to be able to shuttle it through the body and therefore be able to recycle that lactate back into the system to create more energy. Plus, by moving around, you're keeping those muscles nice and warm and stopping them from stiffening up. But the speed at which you're actively recovering is going to vary a lot between session to session. It really depends on what you're specifically trying to work. For example, I set a fartlek session, which is a minute off, minute on, and we're working between 10 and 15 seconds either side of your tempo or threshold. That minute off, even though it is fairly swift, is technically an active recovery. This is more of that shuttling exercise. You're playing between that aerobic and anaerobic threshold. Now, if you're hitting it right at the top of that VO2 max zone, I'm talking sessions that I've done have been 8 by 300 meters of 3-minute recovery, 4 by 600 or 6 by 400 of a whole 4-minute recovery, then yeah, the active recovery is going to be a hell of a lot slower. But the active recovery is still there. This is because this kind of session is really targeting that alactic system, the system of the initial energy, into the transition into your anaerobic system where you're working without oxygen. I still tend to get a little shuffle on, and during a 3-minute recovery, it tends to be about a lap jog. So what's that? 12-minute miling. Not very quick, but better than standing. Just keeping those muscles nice and warm. Other sessions where you may have, say, 60 seconds or 90 seconds off, the active recovery is slightly different again. You want to be moving far quicker in your active recoveries, getting a very easy jog on. This is because we want to try and keep that heart rate up. The only real reason you're having that 60 to 90 second recovery is to have a bit more of a brain break rather than anything else. We're trying to simulate the breaks as much as possible. So by having less of a break and keeping that heart rate up, we're able to simulate the stresses that the body's going to go through during your race. Doing 5 by a K with a 60-second recovery at a 5k pace is going to be far easier than running 5k continuously at 5k pace, obviously. But during that 60-second break, if we can try and keep that heart rate up and keep it closer to what's happening in the race, you're going to be far more conditioned to those race conditions. So moving on to more kind of tempo and threshold work, is there any advantage in breaking down thresholds to incorporate shorter recoveries during a session? So say do 3 by 10 minutes with a 60-second break, rather than doing 30 minutes continuous? Well, again, if we're looking at the recoveries, keeping the recovery active, again, is very beneficial. You really want to keep that kind of active recovery moving quite swiftly, and I'll draw a graph to show you why. Can I please apologise for the state of this graph? This is the first time I've done any drawing since GCSE geography. So in that top graph, the athlete has run a continuous session, say that 30-minute continuously. It takes about 3 minutes, running at threshold pace, to be able to reach that threshold zone with your lactate. Hence that curve at the beginning and then flattening off. That flattening off is where the lactate in is equal to the lactate out. In the second session underneath, you can see that it is taking the same amount of time to reach that zone, but then there are 3 little dips. Those 3 little dips are where the athlete has taken a short break. So they have dropped out the zone, and then it takes a little bit of time to then reach back into the zone. So by running continuously, you're able to stay in that zone for far longer. But there are a few caveats to running a continuous session. One is actually quite difficult to be able to run a threshold pace if you're not used to it. It's a very weird pace to run at. So a lot of athletes, I find, when you're coaching them for the first time, either run far too slowly or they run far too quickly, and hence aren't really working the right system. Working far too quickly, you're still shuttling the lactate out at the same rate. However, you're overworking the system far too much, getting the same benefits, but working far too hard to get them. Run too slowly, and you're never quite reaching a threshold zone and getting all the lovely goodness that zone brings. Hence, we set a few different breaks. Those breaks are in there so the athlete can readjust. Do they need to be running a little bit quicker? Do they need to be running a little bit slower? And also, by having a little break, it gives your brain a rest. It's actually quite a nasty pace to run at for a long period of time. You do sometimes need a little bit of a break. So it's good for people learning the zone to actually have a little bit of a break, but you don't want the drop off to be too big, which is what you'd get in a standing recovery, hence you keep that recovery nice and active. But what do you find? Have you tried both standing recoveries and active recoveries? What have you found works for you? Let me know in the comments below, and I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you very much for watching. As ever, give my video a like, and if you could subscribe, that would be brilliant, and I'll catch you in the next one.